my messaging for corporate America is this is difficult. This isn't there's no like everyone that wants to come out with a solution. Like here's the 8 steps on how to build your perfect workplace culture. No. I've worked in so many companies and like every culture has to be built around whatever it is you might want to be, right? And it takes a visionary leader and it takes people who are willing to hold people accountable to that culture. It's a realization that this is always going to be and has always been an evolution that we continue to try stuff. So for me, I'm a big tester, right? I want to continue to try like, hey, this isn't working. Let's try something else. Let's do A/B testing. Why is this working? Why this isn't working? And we tend to just continue to do the same thing, same thing, same thing. I go into companies all the time that are like, our turnover is 100%. Oh, cool. Like, how long has it been that way? Oh, it's for 10 years. Why? Well, it's just the industry, Tim. And then I can immediately go find somebody in their industry that has 50% turnover or 25% turnover. And then they'll go, oh, well, they're special. Well, then why can't you be special? And why are you allowing this to be the case? Why are you allowing turnover to happen? And they're like, "What do you mean allowing?" I'm like, "Yeah, you allow it. You allow somebody to leave your company. You don't have to let them leave." They're like, "Wait a minute, I can't lock them in." I'm like, "No, but you could figure out a way to keep them. Like you, if you really thought about it, you could keep every single person."
Hi, I'm Denise Chaffin, and I'm your podcast host for Talking TA. And this morning I have with me Tim Sackett, who is the CEO of HRU Tech. And Tim, you live in Michigan. Yeah, I was reading that earlier. Welcome. Welcome to Talking TA.
Thanks for having me. Literally, the company that I own and run now was the company my mother started 45 years ago. So I always tell people, like, people always ask, like, "Well, how did you get into recruiting?" And everyone goes, like, it's, "Oh, I fell into it," right? Like, no one woke up as a child going, "Oh, I can't wait. One day I'm gonna be a recruiter." It's like, "Oh, I'm gonna be a doctor, a firefighter, a lawyer, or whatever, a teacher." And I actually grew up with a mother who was a recruiter, and she was a single mom. I have an older sister, and I literally can vividly remember sitting on her bed at night as she was actually doing screening calls of candidates, and my we would be watching TV with no sound on. She would have the phone tucked in here, she's taking notes, and then she would pay my sister and I 10 cents to stuff skills checklist into envelopes and then lick them, and she would address them. And that's what we did, like, as a family, and that was, like, Monday through Thursday. She usually didn't make calls on Friday, Saturday, Sunday kinda thing. And so I grew up, like, knowing the business. And so I try to tell people, like, I was born into it. So right out of college, I actually went and worked for mom in the recruiting world. It did really well. And one of my accounts was General Motors, and I got this relationship with HR executive at General Motors that in my mind, because 'cause you're young, I wasn't really thinking like, "I'm in a family business. One day I'll run the business." It was you just is like you have your career and you wanna do more, and so I went and got my master's in HR. I truly believed I was going to go work and take over for this guy at General Motors. Like, I'm like, this is how, like, naive you are as a young person. And so went through, got my master's in HR, and then decided to actually go and work in corporate HR, and never thought after I started working in corporate HR, I'm like, "Oh, I love HR, and, like, this is amazing," and I'm working but then I kept getting yanked back to recruiting because, like, in our world, for the most part, HR people hate recruiting. I mean, it's just reality, right? It's like they're so different in the world, but I liked both, and so I was this weird kind of unicorn, and so I kept running into, like, corporate issues where I would have a VP of a division go, "Oh my gosh, we're not gonna be able to do whatever because we can't find talent." And I'd be like, "I can do that, like, we can do this." And so I kept getting yanked, like, back and forth. Like, they were like, "Okay, now you're gonna run TA at this company. Okay, now I wanna go back to HR. No, you're gonna run TA." In my last corporate job, I was running TA of a large health system in Michigan, and I got a call, and my mom had a health scare, And she was like, "Hey, I'm gonna sell the company, or you can come back and run it." And so that's what I've been doing. And interesting enough, like how do we become like on a podcast together is around 15 years ago when all this kind of went down. I was also just starting to write a blog for Fistful of Talent, and my buddy Chris Dunn, who's now the CHRO for Marriott. And so like I was starting this career of writing, speaking, and so I have these weird 2 parallel careers that took off at the same time, coming back and running the family business and staffing, and then also this kind of HR influencer, TA influencer kind of thing. And so, yeah, that's kind of like everyone's like, I get asked more than anybody, like, "So what do you do?" Like, like you're at a conference and they're like, they don't understand. They're like, I don't understand what you do." You're like, "You just go to conferences and speak and you make money?" And I'm like, "Well, kind of, but not that's not the only thing I do."
Well, now tell me about HRU Tech. I mean, are you still, because according to your profile, it's a IT and engineering staffing firm. So you're still running that company, so you still have that.
Yeah, which is unique, especially in our community as like influencers, analysts, all these people, experts that come out. So many like they leave the corporate world and just become like this full-time kind of social media personality, whatever that might be. I actually still run a recruiting shop. So I'm still day to day. We have recs and new recs and all the craziness that goes with, do we need more top of funnel? Do we have people that ghosted on an interview or didn't show up day one? Like I'm in the middle of all of that. And so I think that actually lends itself to being a little more credible within the market when I go on stage and talk about something. I'm not talking about something I did 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I'm talking about something that last week happened. This is in the weeds of the day in a life of a recruiting leader, recruiter, or whatever that might be. And also having the corporate background as well and understanding both sides of it, I think is pretty helpful. And I just and I'm a nerd for all the technology stuff as well. So I tend to get involved with a lot of the tech. And I have this nice little kind of lab that we can try a lot of stuff out. And I can call BS on a vendor. If they go, "Hey, we have tech that does A, X, Y, and Z." I'm like, "Cool, let me try. Let's see. I'll tell you if it actually does this or not," which is really nice.
I've done that. Yeah. I think a few of us are able to, well, and they don't like sometimes the feedback. I mean, you start to make friends with these people, kind of your colleagues, and all of a sudden you kind of give them feedback and they're like, "What?" And then they want to charge LinkedIn prices. Yeah, that's a whole conversation in itself.
I saw one of those yesterday. We're the same price as a LinkedIn seat. I'm like, "Oh, awesome." Like, so now I have to pay twice? I don't like it.
No, yeah, I know. That, yeah, that is a conversation though, really in itself. But one thing, okay, you are also an author besides
Yep.
HRU Tech and your speaking engagements at the Talent Fix. Okay, so now I ordered the book, but it's not supposed to
Yeah.
get here till tomorrow, which is
Okay.
unfortunate. There are a couple of things I did pick up though in the sample part of the book that I thought, "Oh my gosh, this would be a great conversation." And it's about recruiting is the same for every industry.
Yeah.
And I think it's important, especially right now, Tim, to kind of maybe dive into that a bit because
Yeah.
there is so much change and fluctuation going on. And there are so many recruiters contacting us constantly, right? Looking for new opportunities, trying to get some just advice or career consulting. What path do I take going forward? What am I going to do? Am I going to stay in recruiting? Am I going to switch to HR? And I
Yeah.
know some people have. And
Yeah.
it's funny, I've always made the joke that talent acquisition or recruiters were the redheaded stepchildren of the HR industry, right?
Hey, I resemble that remark. Yeah.
Same, right?
I do think it's unique. So I've recruited in retail, I've recruited in tech, I've recruited in restaurants, I've recruited in healthcare, and I wrote that chapter based on an interaction I had with the CEO when I got hired into working at the large health system and running TA for a large health system because the CEO, the CHRO wanted to hire me. They're like, "You're our number one candidate. We want to hire you." The CEO is telling me that I can't hire you because there's no way in hell we're going to hire somebody from Applebee's that hires bartenders and dishwashers to hire doctors and nurses. That's the exact quote, right? So I said, "Well, let me have an hour with him." And after an hour, he's like, "You're the guy." Because, like, the reality is I was able to talk through the process of what really is happening in recruiting, especially what's really happening at like, what I knew of what was happening at the health system. And the reality is 90% of corporate recruiting, no matter what industry you're in, is literally we post a job, we pray for somebody to apply, and then we process those people that apply through our terrible process. And then we wonder why we're unsuccessful. And this is an organization that had 4 heads of TA in 5 years. Like, they just kept churning people through that thought, "Oh, I'll come in and make it better," and they just did the same thing, same thing. And so I think it was the reality of this executive understanding. This was an executive that had worked his entire career in healthcare. And so it was really understanding when I said, "Okay, here's how I would actually go out and hire nurses. Here's actually how I would go out and hire physicians and everything in between. And here's the process that we would do." And it was completely different than what they had been doing. And then what you realize is that it's all about language. It's all about the buzzwords and stuff like that. Now, can a technical recruiter, an IT recruiter, be really, really good and have this great network in IT, and then go over to healthcare and nursing and fail? For sure. Now, but I think if you're a good recruiter in any industry that knows how to recruit and knows what they're doing, it's just a matter of time to learn the language and build the network, and you're gonna be just as good in any industry that you're in. And the problem we have is non-HR, non-recruiting executives in our space believe that's not the case. They believe, well, like, when I actually showed up at the health system, I had 3 of my recruiters were nurses. They had a belief that only a nurse could recruit a nurse. And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Like, by the way, within the health system, we had 250 different job codes that we were hiring for. And so, why do we believe then that a nurse could hire a cook or hire a sanitation engineer or a maintenance person or whatever? Like, they're like, "Do I have to have every single job code to hire an individual?" Like, it made no sense at all.
That's amazing. Now, what was your process? I mean, how did you explain your process to convince the CEO that you're the guy?
Well, for the most part, here's, the ironic thing about this too is, like, when I got to the health system and started running TA, I literally had to scan or key my way through 3 different doors to get to the recruiting department. They were locked behind all these doors. And I had my recruiters, for the most part, spend about 80% of their time in any given week in meetings. And so they weren't really recruiting. They were just administering a process, but they believed they had to be in these meetings because they were supporting these divisions. And I'm like, "Well, you're not recruiting then. You're actually not processing candidates. You're not going through anything." And so I basically canceled every single meeting they had and said they had to actually get on the desk and recruit. And immediately I had executives like losing their minds. And I'm like, "I'll come to every one of these meetings." And so I spent most of my first 90 days going to meetings and understanding that it was a colossal waste of time for a recruiter to sit in operational meetings. I'm not sa I like, again, I'm not saying that broad strokely because I do think it's important that the recruiter understands what's going on in the divisions and locations of recruiting. I actually wanted my recruiters to go out and walk the floor with the nursing manager, talk to them, understand what they needed from their next nurse, and do stuff like that. Those were the experiences I wanted my recruiters to do. I didn't want them literally going from conference room to conference room to conference room all day long and not being able to actually flow through a lot of candidates and actually move the process forward. So that, I mean, that was one big piece, was actually giving them capacity back to actually recruit. The other piece was really digging into the community of nurses and people we already had to understand who do they know and why aren't we leveraging this giant referral network that we had. We had 5,000 nurses, and yet every single time we went to go hire a nurse, we acted like it was the first time we've ever hired a nurse. So there's so many things that you can go from industry to industry and do the same thing. It has nothing to do with what you're trying to recruit or who you're trying to recruit. It's actually just the process of it, the game plan that you have.
It's so true. I know I've spent a lot of time in the semiconductor industry and in
Yeah.
tech, and other companies would say, "Well, you've got all this time in semiconductor. How how do I know that you can recruit in another area?" I said, "Well, I also happen to have a contract with the state of Arizona for all sorts of bizarre jobs. I said,
Yeah.
last year, one of our projects was to hire 65 early childhood mental health consultants. I go, that came out of left field. So
Yeah.
I've always said though that if you, as a recruiter, if we ask the right questions, we're going to get the job done. It's a matter of knowing what questions to ask and how far into a conversation to get with a hiring manager and a hiring team to understand. I love what I learned too at RecFest last year. There was a woman I was interviewing, um, and she mentioned when you start with a company, you need to learn everything about that company. And yeah, you don't have to sit in meetings to do it.
Yeah.
You can meet with the marketing team. Marketing teams are great, right? To learn about the company. They explain so much, the sales organization. Yeah, because you don't have to go operational. You're
Yeah.
there. Yeah, you're there to sell the company. So
It
you
is
need to know the
it is
company.
interesting, like, in our world, no head of HR, head of TA wants to work with a third party. If I went to any of these companies and said they're like, "Oh, Tim, well, what do you specialize in?" Like, "Oh, no, we're just a generalist recruiting firm, we do it all." They'd be like, "Ugh, no thanks." So we have to go, "Oh, we're actual technical recruiting, mostly we're hard engineering." And then we find customers that need those needs and they want to work with you because you have to be specialized. The reality is my recruiters know how to recruit. We actually invest time and resources to train them on an ongoing basis. We give them the best technology. We hold them accountable to a funnel of metrics. Like I built a machine. So whether you give me an engineering job or you give me a supply chain job or you give me a finance job or you give me an HR job, I'm 100% confident my team will fill it. The problem is, companies believe they have to have specialization, otherwise and it goes back to this whole concept of it doesn't matter the recruiting is recruiting is recruiting. Doesn't matter the industry, and no one's this special butterfly. You can always find the network, especially today. I always tell people with the technology we have today, it actually has never been easier in the history of the world to find a candidate than it is today. And actually tomorrow will be easier. The day after that will be even easier because the tech just gets better and more people get added. It's harder for us to dig through all of that data, find the right people that were willing to accept our jobs, our location, blah, blah, blah. But don't get yourself confused. It's not harder to find people. It's actually easier to find
It
people.
is.
And
It is.
most people don't understand that concept and they disagree with it. And then you're like, "I can show you the data that it's actually
Sure.
easier to find."
That data is important. It really is. I look back because I've been recruiting since the late '80s, and, yeah, well, I mean, I didn't even use a computer until 1994, I think was the first time I used a
Yeah.
computer, and we didn't have job boards and the internet. So to your
Yeah.
point, it is so much easier to you can go and find any CEO. I've always made jokes about executive search. Executive search had a place and time many years ago because those people had a good Rolodex, right? But,
Yeah.
I mean, how many people know what a Rolodex is now?
Oh, I remember I had to do pharmacy recruiting, and everyone was like, "Oh my god, it's the hardest thing you'll ever do." And I go, I can literally call the state of whatever state I'm in. They will send me an entire list of every licensed pharmacist in the entire state with their address, their phone number, their email. And I'm like, "You're telling me this is difficult?" Now, it's difficult talking somebody to leave one pharmacy job for another when they have unlimited number of jobs, but, like, these people were like, I was confused by that. I'm like, "I know everybody. My entire pool is right here."
Right,
Now it's just,
right.
can I make a persuasive argument of why, like, you should come work for us? I do think the technology makes us a little lazy. We all have the war stories of when we first started, and for us, it was me working for my mom. Like, we had file cabinets of resumes based on like, "Oh, it's a process engineer, a manufacturing engineer, industrial engineer," whatever, and I remember going and pulling out it was file 63. Like, burned into my brain, like, this was my process engineer file, GM needed a process engineer. There might have been 40 resumes in this file. I called every single one, got a hold of every single person in that file. None of them wanted the job. Go into mom, I go, "Look, all of these people, I called every single one, none of them want the job." And she literally just looked at me and said, "Call them again." And you're like 21, 22. walking back to your office with your tail between your legs going, "What the hell am I gonna do calling these people again?" But what happened was you became a better recruiter because I would call them like, "Hey, Sam, it's Tim. I know we just talked yesterday. I know you don't want the job. I'm desperate. Who do you know?" Right? So now all of a sudden the network so now I go from 40 resumes to 60 resumes and blah, blah, and little by little, I found the person by calling them again, and now asking the questions I probably should have said when they're like, "Hey, I'm not interested," I probably should have dug then, right? Also, there's a little psychology involved where when you call somebody back that's already told you no, they're like, "Dude, why are you calling me again?" And then they feel the desperation, they feel the pain you're going through of like, "Look, I have to find somebody for this. Do you know anybody? Can you just give me a name? I'll figure it out." And then they actually most people I think actually wanna help you, right? I think they wanna help you, they wanna try to help somebody else. So it forced us to be better at recruiting, and now I just like, oh, I'm like, if I can literally I could search for process engineers all day long, and I could call process engineers for the next year and never get to the end of process engineers. But it doesn't force me to be better. It just forces me to do more of the same, which I think sometimes is actually worse.
Well, you brought up a point a while ago that it's easy to become lazy in this process based on that
Yeah.
because you're
Oh,
not.
my own young people that work for me as recruiters constantly just wanna, like it's all email, text, email, text, email, text. And I go, Would you ever accept a job or an interview without talking to a real person?" "No." "Well, why do you think these people are?" Like, we're not going for entry level. Like, we're going for experienced people that are making 150, 250, $300,000 a year, and you think you're gonna text them and they're gonna agree to an interview? Like, it just doesn't work that way.
It's interesting, but that is our challenge right now, I think, as professionals who've been in this business for a long time, is to train and to bring these people up to speed. So you're not really training them on how to recruit, but on how to communicate and develop a relationship with somebody beyond digital.
Yeah, yeah. We did an interesting survey for the book. We went out and said we want to do a survey of every single person that we actually interviewed or screened last year. So we had well over 2,000 individuals that we had sent well, it was like more like 5,000 individuals, but we had 2,000 over 2,000 responses that came back on the survey. So it was people that we had actually interviewed and then either were sent on to a job, sent on to another interview, whatever that might be. And the whole conversation was around, how do you wanna be contacted as a candidate? And so I was sure that it was gonna be 90% of these candidates were gonna say, "Just send me a text message for a first interaction. Let me know what the job is." And it was actually completely the opposite. It was 87% said they would prefer email as a first interaction because they didn't want some recruiter, like, jumping into their DMs on their phone trying to sell them something. But then after the email, if they decided they actually wanted to have this interaction, "I'm interested in the job," then it was all text from there. And so and again, once it got to a certain point, obviously it went to voice, but, like, in terms of finding out the interest and stuff, it was email, then text. But interestingly, we had the data because we do both. So my team will actually call, email, and text a candidate as a first kind of outreach. And so we know the response rate of each. And, like, even though they had 87% said they would actually wanna have to do an email first, 60% actually replied to a text message over any other thing. So what they're saying they want and desire versus their action is completely different, and we thought that was interesting. So you're telling me you want email, but yet you actually respond better to text, even though you're telling us you don't want that. So it's a weird dynamic that, that's out there right now.
It is, and well, and it's actually with the hiring managers too. Trying to reach hiring managers on email. I think too, because we've got LinkedIn, people are using Slack, they're using what other modalities, right? Platforms to communicate. So if it's all digital, I mean, where does your email fall in line with respect to priority versus a text message is right there.
It speaks to our industry though that I was at Sherm Talent last week, right? And I had this big room and I asked like, "Hey, raise your hands if you're still struggling to get feedback from hiring managers." 90% of the room raised their hand. And I'm like, "This is 2025 and we still can't get a hiring manager to reply back to us." To me is unfathomable. Like I don't understand it at all. And part of it is we've actually done this to ourselves. We've set ourselves up as a service provider to hiring managers and not a peer. At the end of the day, I'm not your vendor. I'm actually a peer. I'm actually working with you in this company for the success of the company. And you either respect the work I do or you don't. But if you won't give me feedback on a candidate, as a recruiting leader, I tell my recruiters, you close that rec immediately. And they go, well, wait a minute, Tim, like they're going to lose their minds and then their executive's going to call you. I'm like, yeah, I want to have that call. I wouldn't explain to that executive how this hiring manager decided that the work our team is doing and the resources we're spending are meaningless and worthless, and they don't matter to them. And immediately you see the backup of the hiring manager going, no, 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 no. But you have to set that kind of no, I'm a peer to you. I'm not a vendor to you. And HR's done this as well. And so it's all part of like a bigger thing of like, oh, we're a service to you. You're our client. That's BS. I'm not your client. I'm a peer. And I expect to like you to interact with me as a peer. And we still have way too much of that going on as an industry that we have to kind of change.
Oh, so I so agree.
You're like, preach, preach, brother.
Well, yeah. Well, it's funny you say that because I recall working for Motorola, and we did it also at On Semiconductor, where we had a lot of disengagement on the hiring manager side or the hiring teams, and they would back off even meetings. We'd set up debrief meetings, and they'd back off of those or not show up. And so we did the same thing. We canceled the requisitions, and they had to come to us. Oh, actually, they had to go to the executive team with us there to justify why that position needed to remain open because they weren't providing feedback, and we were there to kinda rat them out. So it did put a different spin and a different perspective, for them on what our role is. Now, the only problem, though, is that's great if you're working for a company, but what if you're working as an agency, though, and you're trying to work through
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
because they are your client.
Denise, like I spend like most of my time I spend in my company is to try to get my team not to work for free. Like that's the agency world, right? That's our motto is like, how do we not work for free right today? um, and so there's a lot of, I think there's and some of it you just can't get away from, right? You start to work with a client and you're going through the process and they're like, oh, we've decided to close the rec or we've decided to promote somebody from within or whatever. Oh, our CEO's best friend decided to come work for us and they're going to take that job. There's a million reasons why recs don't get filled. But that's, I mean, that's the hard part. But even when I was on the corporate side, it was still a motto I had. I didn't want my teams to work for nothing. And that meant if we're going to work on a job and you'd had one of these hiring managers that just kept saying, well, I'm really picky. Just keep sending me more. Just send me everybody. And they didn't seem like they were any urgency to actually fill the job. I would go in like, hey, we're going to close this. No, no, I want to keep seeing what's out there. No, we're not playing this game. Understand there's work going on to get you these people. And there's other parts of the company that actually need to fill positions drastically, right? And I can't have somebody wasted their time. So that whole concept of working for free, I think, goes across agency, RPO, corporate. It's how do we ensure that the jobs we're working on are actually moving forward to completion, you know?
Well, that's why I think too on the contingency side, it's hard when you have a one-off position because there is a good chance that position will close before you fill it for whatever
Yeah.
reason.
Yeah, I stopped my sales team bringing those in. I said, "So here's what we did instead." So we said, "Hey," because I could go out as a salesperson in agency, and I could bring in 25 contingent openings a day. It's the easiest thing in the world. When I was on corporate, the fastest way to get a contingent person off the phone was to go, "Yeah, I'll give you an opening. Here you go. Send me your contract. I don't care." And they would go and work on it, and I would be like, just not pay attention to anything they sent me. Like it was, and because the end of the day, I didn't really want to pay them money, and I knew my team could fill it. But so that happens constantly. So I told my team, The only way we're going to bring in a contingent opening is we do partial retain. So we actually, if we bring a contingent opening in, we have the client actually has to pay us 10% of the estimated fee. So if it's a $20,000 fee, they're going to give us $2,000 to start the search. And 100% of those we actually fill, because there's a psychological factor there too of like, oh, well, we already gave Tim 2 grand. So we might as well now I know they're serious. Now that I know they're gonna look at our candidates and they have this lock of, we've already invested a little, so let's make sure we get the most out of this. Even though it's literally pennies on the dollar comparable to what the fee will be ultimately. And so our team brings in 90% less contingent openings, but we fill 100% of the ones we bring in.
That's amazing. Good for you. Yeah, some people call that a container versus a retainer. I've heard that term, container fee, because well, and the guy that brought me into this business many years ago, John McDonald, he is still in the business, and but he always said that way, then you have this commitment from them because they want you to commit to doing the work, but what's
But
their
they're not willing to
commitment?
put the commitment on the other side.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny, I was on the phone yesterday with a startup technology vendor, and they were just like, "Why don't I just start a staffing firm?" He's like, "I work for a year to get somebody to sign a $50,000 contract, and you guys can work for 30 days and fill an opening and make $50,000." And I'm like, "Well, it's not that easy, but
No,
yeah." It's
no,
like
not generally, and if it happens maybe twice in your career.
and there's a lot like, and like, I'm like, you say you like, they believe it's a year in the sales process. I go, I might work with an HR leader for 10 years in my career before I finally fill a position with them, right? It's like, there's a lot of time and effort spent in building those relationships as well.
Well, I started this company in 2013, and we did our fee schedule based on hourly work, contract work,
Yeah,
like an
I've seen that
RPO,
as
but
well.
I didn't like being called an RPO because we don't do what an RPO does, and so somebody told
Yeah.
me at a conference a couple of years ago, "Oh, you're a RAS company, recruitment as a service." I go, "Okay, that sounds all right." And then Intel
Yeah.
calls us staff augmentation. That works too. So, I mean, there's a lot of different names that we can fall under if you're working hourly for a company. And yeah, you don't get the big fees, but at the same time, they're committing to you, right? And not only that,
Exactly.
but you're providing, I think, a little bit different service because you're working directly with their recruiters. And so that for us has been a little easier because you don't have to go through so many people in order to get that feedback. And the recruiter is there, boots on the ground to get that feedback for you. And so you're kind of supporting them in a different way. So yeah, there are different ways to work this. Now going back though to what we were talking about initially, and recruitment's the same in every industry. I so love that. But the only thing is, how do we change the mentality around that for people in various industries? I mean, how do we get the word out that
I I don't know if you can, honestly. Like, I think part of it is like, for me, I think in the recruiting space, especially in the agency space, it's easy enough to have someone go like, just, and we do this with our team a lot too, is just give us the opening you can't fill. Let us show you, right? And they'll go, okay, here you go. So they're going to give you their like purple squirrel kind of unicorn opening. And then you go show them that you actually can find people and you can do it. Part of that again is they just, I find a lot of like corporate TA leaders, HR leaders, they just want to know that you care and that you're actually are willing to work and put the work in. Because the recruiting agency world is like the lowest common denominator in terms of entry. Like anybody with a laptop and a phone can start a recruiting agency. And so you literally within the US market, there's over 9,000 recruiting agencies. The vast majority of those are one person shops. And so the industry is just flooded with people that don't, they're just looking for a quick buck or looking for an easy fill or something like that. They're not really willing to grind out with you as a client in the good times and bad times and the times where you're like, look, my job's on the line because I have to fill 60 openings in the next quarter or we're toast. And you're like, okay, our team will come on and we'll work our butts off with you to make that happen. That's what they really want to know. And yet the industry is just filled with work with me, work with me, work with me, work with me, pay me a check. And then there's no loyalty or kind of that camaraderie that goes back and forth of saying, hey, I just want like, I wanna partner with you in a real way. Like, I'm not here to replace you. I'm here to, like, fill the capacity that maybe your team doesn't have right now. But if you don't need us for 6 months, cool. We'll still be here. Let us know. So,
Yeah, that's good. Good stuff. And another thing that you mentioned a unicorn a while ago. I think you've said unicorn, right? Anyway, that came up in one of the sample pieces for your book. Let's talk about that for a minute, 'cause I really I really and I think it's important. This is an important conversation right now too, because I think a lot of people are feeling ghosted. And so how do we resolve that? By sharing the message, we're not unicorns, none of us.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, like, in terms of, like, the ghosting side of this or just in terms of, like,
Well,
dig into
people
that.
okay, I don't know about you, but I see all these LinkedIn messages. I don't know how many you are coming through on your feed, but
Oof, too
people who
many.
are desperate for work, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And they're showing their desperation. I've applied to and they give you numbers of how many positions they've applied to and how many companies have contacted them and kicked them to the curb and how many companies have ghosted them. And so there's a lot of desperation, there's a lot of frustration out there. People are just full of angst over the industry and the fact that they can't get feedback from companies. But when I saw your little note though on we're not a unicorn or you're not a unicorn, I thought,
Oh,
wow,
yeah,
that
yeah.
resonates with me because people have to understand that, especially with so much turmoil right now, so much change, and so many people looking for work in the same industry. How do we rise to the top? How do we and then
Yeah,
on the corporate side, how are we gonna bring those people in? How do we find those people that we want to be unicorns?
yeah, like, the one like, I'll start with the second first is that I think the one of the things I talk about in the book is the concept of from a brand standpoint, like, you're not Google, you're not Facebook. You're probably ABC Manufacturing in whatever hometown you're in, which is a cool company, people like to work there, but, like, I could go to the local university and ask 100 kids, like, who the top, like, employers are in your market, and you're not gonna come up in the top 10. I mean, that's just a reality. Most people have no idea, especially executives are the worst at this. They think, "Oh my gosh, we're the one place here in town that everybody wants to come work." And then I'll go and talk to young people, and there'll be 3 Starbucks in the city, and they'll think, like and Starbucks will come up as the 3rd, like, highest, like, employer in the city in terms of what their belief is, because it's a brand recognition, it's the unicorn brand. And and yet they'll have no idea that there's some benefits company that employs 1,500 people a mile from campus that has 250 openings that they can't fill, and yet they have no idea that's even there. And so people go, "Oh, so we need to spend more on branding." I'm like, "No, actually, no." Because your brand is the same as everybody else's, and you're not gonna stand out because the unicorn brands are so big. You need to spend more on marketing. You need to spend more on job advertising. You need to figure out how to get in front of those kids. But again, we as HR people, we tend to go, we don't think like marketers, we don't think like sales, we think like process. So we're like, "Oh, we just need to spend more money on our website and our career site." And you're like, "No, bad money." Like, that's not gonna be the one from that standpoint. The candidate perspective is fun is it different because I think how do you stand out as a candidate for me is completely you have to leverage your networks. And, like, younger people tend not to understand that. It's the one thing I mean, I on a weekly basis, I'll have multiple young people reach out to me, again, looking for a job. "How can I help?" And they come from really good schools. It'd be like University of Michigan or Alabama or wherever. And I'm like, "Cool." Like, I'm looking at your LinkedIn profile, you have 380 connections. Where do you wanna work? And they're like, "Oh, I wanna work in Chicago." Cool. I can pull your data. It looks like you have 25 connections in Chicago, none of which worked at the University of Michigan, right? I can pull the data and say there's 15,000 people in Chicago that went to University of Michigan. You need to network with every single one of them. And because they're alumni and they're who they like and magically, a couple of weeks in and they're a few hundred connections in, all of a sudden they start to feel momentum around jobs and around things happening and people wanting to meetings being set up and talking. and they realize like that this ability to network and leverage their education, leverage whoever that might be. I see it also where young people are unwilling to like leverage their mom and dad, their aunts and uncles, their mom and dad's friends. Like they somehow there's like this badge of honor if you found the job yourself. And I'm like, stop being an idiot. Like go use everybody you can. Like all like my 2 older ones who are in the work world, I networked and found them jobs immediately, right? Because with really good brands, because I knew that was gonna be an advantage for them. And I would reach out to heads of HR I knew and said, "Hey, my kid needs an internship this summer. What can we do?" And they're like, "Don't worry about it. We'll take care of it." And it's because I had this great relationship with them, and people just think, "Oh, I'm just gonna go to the internship career fair, and I'm gonna apply for 1,000 internships, and I'm not hearing anything back." And it's like, yeah, because you're one of a million that's doing this and you can't stand out. But if someone goes, "Oh, you're Tim Sackett's kid or you're Denise's kid or you're whatever, my nephew, my," all of a sudden now somebody is looking at you and you went from somebody in a pile to the top of the pile. And people are like, "Well, that's unfair. What about those kids that don't have those networks?" I'm like, "We all had networks. Everybody has a network. And you gotta figure out how to leverage those." So, like, I just don't take that, like, I see kids from every part of background. I have my kids have played sports and had kids from every part of background, and every one of those kids could network with me. Like, again, there are networks there. Are you willing to leverage them becomes the bigger piece of that.
Or educating them on leveraging their networks. I mean, there's so many people I speak to who there was a woman I helped her with her resume a couple months ago, and she was looking for some career coaching, and so we worked through her issues and whatnot, but she had no idea how to leverage her network. So that's what we worked on in our 3rd session was leverage. She got a job. She got a
No,
job.
it is interesting because it seems so, like, straightforward for us, but again, that's part of that's from the recruiter side. We kinda see the process all the way through, so we kinda know how people are found and how people are not found. And so, again, I just think there's so many tools to be able to do that in today's world, and so many of these kids just wanna stay on their phone and apply to job, apply to job, apply to job, apply to job, and you're just like, "That's just how it's not how people get hired," you
No,
know?
and I think for us who've been doing this for a while, we developed in-person relationships with people via what was it my accountant said one time? The best way to create a relationship with somebody is number 1 in person. The next best way is Zoom or video conferencing. I shouldn't say Zoom, video conferencing. 3rd way is telephone. 4th way is email. And I said, "Oh, that's an interesting way to kind of line it out." But people have and I think that COVID kinda hurt and helped us at the same time because it kind of pushed us to doing more video conferencing and eye-to-eye contact, but we had the opportunity to start developing relationships early on with in-person and eye-to-eye contact. Young people, they grew up with digital, so now we have to reverse engineer how they meet people, how they develop relationships because they're used to doing it digitally, and now you're pushing
Denise,
them away from their phone.
I just got beat up on LinkedIn yesterday for this because I wrote an entire post about return to work, return to office, and how young people who are willing to return to office, it becomes a life hack for them, right? Because it's such an advantage for them. And the remote work mob, like, came after me in a vengeance. The reality is all those people that were coming after me and just trying to beat me up over remote work is the best, blah, 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 whatever. All of them, like, are like, they are experienced in their career. They have networks built up. They've already experienced this, and they can now crap on it and say it's terrible, blah, 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 but that's because they've had the advantage of going through that. Young people who haven't, the ability to get in the office and interact with people daily, to see people and what's going on, collaborate in at the water cooler, all of those things that happen is such an advantage in today's world. And yet we have a small minority of the population that is in love with remote work and they're remote work advocates, and good for them. Maybe they can actually produce better when they're remote. The vast majority of people can't. They feel like they can't are more productive, but measurably they're actually less productive. And so that's why we have this huge call from a lot of CEOs to return to office. And people are losing their minds over it. And I'm like, if you're a young person that just says, cool, I'm back there, I'm going to go do it. Do it for a year and then tell me what you think. Just give it a shot. You did the remote thing. How did that work out for you? Right? Like try some other things, try some new things, see what's going on. Um, and
Because
I
there's
think
nothing
those
like in
people,
person. There's nothing
the
like
young kids back right now will have such an advantage in their careers over those who don't right now.
right,
Like it's not even close,
right.
you know.
So true.
But people
Yes.
get so angry when I say that. And I don't even think it's
Why?
controversial. Like it's
But why are they
crazy to me.
getting angry? Because people are afraid of change, and I think that COVID kind of pushed us into video and remote work, but, yeah, so many people agree with you though, Tim, and me, that people who are new to career need that interaction. They need to shadow people that are mentoring them, and not just shadow them via remote work, but in person to understand the culture of the company, to understand the culture of people.
I
And
think
yeah,
I think it's a right left ditch, the right ditch, left ditch kind of aspect of this is like people think when I say, "Hey, return to work is a life hack for young people," they think I think, "Oh, you think young people should be in the office from 8 to 5 and Monday through Friday, butts in seats, blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, "No, I think they should go to the office when like, if they have the opportunity, and we should offer them flexibility when they need it. If they have a doctor's appointment at 2 p.m., they don't need to come back to the office unless they have a meeting they set up and they wanna come back to the office or whatever, like or they can, like, treat them like adults, treat them like, give them some flexibility, but they should have in-office opportunity as well, and you saying that somehow is sacrilegious to me is like, I can't even understand it, you know?
I know. It's amazing. So what is your next book?
I have a couple that I'm working on, so one is just kind of surviving corporate America in today's world with all the change.
What prompted that book?
Part of it was blogging for so many years and writing so many things and seeing, again, kind of what people react to, what they don't react to. It's interesting to me, the dynamic of that. Just kind of understanding. To me, I think it's really easy to win in America right now, and yet you have so many people that are just like, it's this is the worst, and you're just like, wow, okay, so we see the world differently. And so again, if you wanna win at corporate, here's how you win at corporate. Now you might disagree that you don't wanna work that way. Cool, you don't wanna win. I don't care. Like, I'm not asking you to win. I'm just saying if you wanna win, here's how you win. Um, and so there's a lot of that stuff. And well, I think the challenges are, again, it is for the most part performance related. It's the whole thing of like we went through this decade of like work life balance. And to me, it was this weird combination of where somehow we went the other way, where it was all of a sudden work had to look at your life and I would try to jam work into your life. That was work life balance. And you're like, that's not how this works. It's like, I'm going to pay you. And at certain times, I'm going to need you to do this job. And then at certain times, you're going to have some flexibility to live your life. And those aren't always in balance. In fact, they're almost always out of balance. There's going to be some times when you need more of your life, and there's going to be some times when I need more of your life. And that's just a reality of situation. And again, most HR people in our space kind of lose their minds over that. They think there should be this perfect, even balance where I come to work and I do my work and then I go home and I'm fabulous home life. Like it's the whole Instagram age of life, right? Is like everything is perfect. And you're like, no, everything's messy. And that's just reality. So that's definitely one. I think we do a terrible job at managing performance because almost all of us are conflict avoidant. So I won't go to you, Denise, and say, hey, you're actually failing at this one thing. And if you could just do this one thing, you're actually going to be exponentially more successful. Like we just don't have those conversations with people, like and so there's a large part of that. I just think there's a lot like, again, after from writing, like, I have 5,000 blog posts that I've written over time, right? And so many kind of, like, just ironic, fun, weird things that we do in the corporate world, like, the one I love to make fun of today because it became a meme, like, all these young people were like, don't give us a pizza party, give us a raise. And I'm just like, do you know reality? Reality is I'm a manager of a department. I have this budget. I have $200 in the budget that I can go buy some pizzas and pop and tell you guys, hey, you're doing a good job. I don't have $20,000 to give everybody a raise. And yet they want to yell because they think somehow I should take the $200 or the $100 I spent on pizza and go, okay, everybody, you get a 1 cent raise. Can you imagine like how that would hit CNN, MSNBC, every news outlet in the world would rip a company for going, we stopped giving pizza parties and we gave everybody 1 penny raise. And yet you have literally thought leaders in our space going out there going, stop giving pizza parties and give us a raise. And I'm like, you're dumb. Like you have no idea how the world works. So it's stuff like that that I think you have to have like this understanding of you actually have a hiring manager who's trying to show you I can give you what I can give you, but I can't give you what I can't give you. But I respect you and I care about the performance and the hard work you're doing. And they're actually trying to do the right thing. And then we're making fun of them for that. Like I can't again, I'm at a disconnect with a lot of things going on in the world.
Oh, we all are. We all are. I mean, there is a lot of disconnect right now. And it's like, what do we rally around first? What's our first fix? And especially as recruiters and working with clients and trying to, hey, you guys, I really can help you. I can partner with you and create some great strategies for you moving forward. And how do we align? It's an alignment, I think, like you said, with corporate America, but then it's an alignment also with the new generations coming in to help them to segue into what we're trying to develop with corporate
And
America.
everybody just wants to rip on us and say, "You guys are old, you don't get it. You're dinosaurs." My oldest son's 28 years old, he's a CPA. He works 80 hours a week right now during busy season. And he goes, "Dad," he came in with a class of like 20 other accountants. He's the only one that's in the office all the time. And I actually have heard from 3 different partners in that firm of, like, how much they actually respect him and, like, how he's on the fast path and all this other stuff that's going on, and they don't even know half the other cohort of that came in with him because they never come in, and I have to go and work. I got so if I'm gonna work and I'm gonna work a 12-hour day, a 14-hour day, a 16-hour day, and they're buying me lunch or buying me dinner. I might as well go grind it out there and then go home and I can live my home life. And again, that world is you have this January to kind of April kind of huge busy season where they have to work a ton of hours. But he goes, even if you're like one of those people that didn't really want to come in the office, like that's the time just to come in for 4 months and then go work remote for the other 8 months, right? But show yourself during the busiest time where all the partners are there and everybody's their hair's on fire and everyone's trying to get all this stuff done. Instead, these people don't show and they're just not known. They're unknown commodity. And they might be actually better workers, who knows? And like again, people would go, well, they should know and they should be measuring and blah blah blah. And you're like, no, this is the whole thing of again, this is human relationships. We need some face to face. Do you have to have it every day? No, but you have to make an effort, you know?
Right. I love though when you talk about flexibility because we talk about hybrid a lot. And I
Yeah.
think hybrid will be like the winning solution for a lot of companies,
Yeah, for
hands
sure.
down. But hybrid also means flexibility, scalability. So I think maybe moving forward with that idea will
Yeah.
help to, I don't know, maybe appease corporate America giants and the executives and the decision makers and whatnot, because you want the best of both worlds. Like you said, it's messy. Things aren't just cut and dry. It's not just black and white. There's more gray
Everybody
area than black and white area.
everybody thinks like that I've forced my entire team to return to office and we're here Monday through Friday. And that's not at all. I don't have I have not one person that comes into the office full time in my office. I actually have 2 people who are fully remote and because we do immeasurably. Where are you measurably most successful?
Right.
I have 2 people in my office that I go, "If you ever try to come to the office, I'll fire you." Like, you're actually better remote. But the other people have tried it and they weren't better. And so we found out that they were actually better with this kind of this hybrid, right? This kind of in and out. where they actually had some time in office and they had some time at home. And we've had people that I've actually had people that said, "Hey, do you mind if I actually come in every single day in the office and work at a desk because this is where I can focus. I have kids at home and a dog and like I just can't focus there. I can focus here." Cool. Yeah, you can because we care about your performance. We want you to be successful. And so we're going to find the environment for you that works best for you. And I think that's how HR should think about this. And yet we have so many people, they're just, they themselves want to work remote. And so they fight it with every ounce of energy they have. And I think they lose credibility because they're not going, okay, cool, that's for you. But that might not be for everybody else, you
Right.
know?
Right. Yeah, so flexibility is the name of the game. So what is your messaging though to corporate America?
Yeah, no, again, my messaging for corporate America is like this is difficult. Like I think I mean, this isn't there's no like everyone that wants to come out with a solution. Like here's the 8 steps on how to build your perfect workplace culture. No. Like I've worked in so many companies and like every culture has to be built around whatever it is you might wanna be, right? And it takes a visionary leader, and it takes people who are willing to hold people accountable to that culture. In and so to me, I think it's the realization so my message to corporate America would be, it's a realization that this is always going to be and has always been an evolution that we continue to try stuff. So for me, I'm a big tester, right? I wanna continue to try it. Like, "Hey, this isn't working. Let's try something else. Let's do A/B testing. Why is this working? Why this isn't working?" And we tend to just continue to do the same thing, same thing, same thing. I go into companies all the time that are like, "Our turnover is 100%." "Oh, cool. Like, how long has it been that way?" "Oh, it's for 10 years." "Why?" "Well, it's just the industry, Tim." And then I can immediately go find somebody in their industry that has 50% turnover or 25% turnover. And then they'll go, "Oh, well, they're special." Well, then why can't you be special? Right? And why are you allowing this to be the case? Why are you allowing turnover to happen? And they're like, "What do you mean allowing?" I'm like, "Yeah, you allow it. You allow somebody to leave your company. You don't have to let them leave." They're like, "Wait a minute. I can't lock them in." I'm like, "No, but you could figure out a way to keep them. You could figure out a way to overpay them or give them something they can't get anywhere else or whatever." Like if you really thought about it, you could keep every single person. Like I tell people all the time, they're like, "Tim, how do you do all that you do?" And they're like, "The top 5 people who work for me have been the lowest one has been with me a decade." And so my top 5 people have been with me 10 years, and I will tell them, "I will never allow anybody else to pay you more." They're like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "That's off the table." If they wanna go out and they wanna find another job and they come to me and said, "Oh, this company wants to pay me $200,000." I'm like, "Okay, then what do you need me to pay you?" Because they're that valuable. So they know that that's part of the case, right? But again, I like you make that decision. There's other people that would go like, "Okay, this person's gonna pay me $100,000." And I'm like, "Cool, good. You should go take that." Because 'Cause I'm not. But I think you take care of your best people.
Well, and when you talk about sharing this message with corporate America, it's important to share it. I can already hear the feedback though saying, "Oh, but we can't pay this person more because then we would have to give raises to everybody else in that organization because we're on what do you call it? A
If you're at market compensation, it's never really a money thing. What I've found is it's usually something else. It's like when I worked at Applebee's, we would have general managers that would and we had really low turnover, but the ones that we had a save strategy, so we just refused if somebody would come to us and put their 2 weeks in, we would send them to the corporate headquarters and have them meet directly with the CEO and CHRO and have a really in-depth conversation. And we had a 40% save rate. So a year after they put that notice in, we were able to save 40% of those a year later, right? And what we found, it was dumb things. It was like, "Hey, my boss refuses to give me Saturday mornings off, and my kids just started playing soccer on Saturdays. So I'm gonna go across the street and work for Chili's because they don't want they'll let me have Saturday morning off." So then you go to the boss and you go, "Okay, how are you so stupid?" And they would be like, "Tim, if I give Denise Saturday off, everyone's gonna want Saturday off." And so then we would go and say, "Okay, what? Let's go. We're gonna drive to every single one of your restaurants. I'm gonna ask every single one of the general managers if they want Saturday morning off." And like Almost none of them were like, "No, I actually like working Saturday mornings because I take Mondays off," or whatever that like, they've worked their schedule, right? And so there is like so it's a misnomer. We hear this all the time, and it's usually HR related because HR wants to treat everybody the same because they believe you're setting precedent. When in reality is we have to again get back to we have to offer some flexibility. We have to go to somebody and say, "Hey, is it okay if Denise comes in at 8 a.m.?" Nope, everybody starts at 7:30. And then you go to the boss and you're like, "Oh yeah, she can come in at 8. I'll just actually have her stay a half hour later and she can set up the next shift. That'll actually work really good for me." You're like, "What?" But we've told everybody they had to be here at 7:30. And you're like, "Yeah, they don't really have to be here at 7:30." It's so there's just stuff like that that I think part of this is just HR's paradigm that has been unwilling to change. Part of it's legal teams' paradigm. They don't wanna deal with the one-offs. They just wanna deal with everybody the exact same way, and the reality is we're not union workers for the most part. A very low percentage. We're not all the same. I'm a 50-year-old white guy that is empty nester, and I can work crazy hours, it doesn't impact me at all. A guy next to me might be 30 and has young kids and has to go to school events and whatever, and, like, we have 2 different lives. There's 2 different needs of flexibility there. We both don't need to work the same schedule, and I think that's where everything has just been, like that's where I think young people come into the work world and look at it and go, "This makes no sense." And you're like, "You're right, it doesn't make sense."
They're here to change it. But it's up to them because they're the ones that are gonna continue to work. So, yeah, if you don't like it, find what the problem is, and then also what is your solution for it? I mean, and flexibility is a huge solution, and it's a huge
Yeah.
message to corporate America. Flex, people, flex. They tell us that we need exercise. Well, it's the same thing. Our brains need exercise too, and we need to be flexible and flex our minds around some of the things that are gonna work, especially with like you said, this is evolution. We're evolving in this process, no matter what industry we work in. There's an evolution process.
One of the I think the failures of DE&I just come from the inclusivity standpoint of this is, like, when we talk about young workers coming in and changing a company. And how it's failed, right? Because, like, these executives, we told them as HR leaders, we said, like, "Hey, we have to be inclusive. So we have to let these people come in, and if they don't like that our logo color is black and they want white, then we should let them have white." Like, "What?" Like, "No, like, our it's black." Like, it's who we've been. And so, I think that's where we took a left turn and went the wrong way, is that what we should have done is to say, "Hey, let me be very clear to you about what company we are and what our culture is and who we are. And then if you want to be a part of this, amazing. And we're going to find the most inclusive, highest talented people to come work that your crazy matches our crazy. If you don't and your crazy doesn't match our crazy, we don't want you and you don't want us. Self-select out. You're gonna be unhappy. I can't tell you how many, like, articles and stories I hear of, like, these workers who are in these companies fighting to change the core of the company, and you're like, "That you don't like that company. Just leave. Go find a company that is like you, that wants to be like you." And again, their argument is like, "Oh, well, it's just all white dudes then." You're like, "No, it's not. No, it's not. I have most of my company is female. I have gay, I have black, I like we found people that their crazy matched our crazy. We get very detailed in the interview process to say, "Here's who we are. You're not changing us when you come in. We might change you, but you will not change us. Our culture will always win." And so, if you think that that's your culture and you love that culture and you want to be a part of that culture, amazing, self-select in. If you go, "Ooh, I don't know, that doesn't sound like me," please self-select out. And we don't do that enough in the interview process. And I think that's, again, one of those things that I think we have to really dig into and understand and say, "No, it's time for you to get the heck out of here." Like, you don't want us, and we don't want you, and that's okay. That doesn't mean we're racist or we're biased. It just means what you want out of life and what we want out of life are not the same thing, and that's cool. You go find what you want. Get that gift for you, because the biggest gift you can give yourself is working for a company that you love to work for. Like, it's amazing. It changes your life.
And even when you don't, when you do self-select out, or you do get rejected, you've still to have that opportunity to, though, to meet those people, to get to know them. Now they're part of your network. Leverage your network because they're not necessarily going to stay there. They might get an offer to go someplace else, and maybe where they go later is a company you do want to work for. So never shut the door on anything. I tell people all the time, always interview
Yeah.
because that's how we
You never
build our
know.
networks. So, and of course, I mean, now I can hear people coming back. Okay, if I could just get an interview, I would. So that's, I mean, we have to still kind of,
Well, I don't, again, like, I think there's a huge ageism issue right now. I've talked to so many people that if you're over 50, it's exponentially. And I can go into an individual company's ATS and take a look at all the people that apply and their demographics, and then all the people that actually get interviews and get hired. And you see a split. That's a chasm between over 50 and who's actually getting interviews and getting hired. We believe that once you turn 50, you turn into a piece of garbage. And yet, if you're under 50, and even better, if you're under 40, somehow you're amazing and you're like at the heart of your career. And and then you go to a company, you'll say, "Oh, what's your average tenure?" And they're like, "Oh, it's 4.2 years." And you're like, "Oh, cool. Tim wants to work another 2 decades. He's gonna work 15 more years, but you think he's too old for you." Okay, got it. He didn't even get an interview. It's a problem. It's another thing, like, that I'll talk about, like, in the books and stuff is, like, there's a lot of those. We don't like old people, we don't like fat people, we don't like ugly people. Like, there's all kinds of people we don't like to hire, but we don't talk about. It's like, "Oh, don't talk about that." Like, "Oh my gosh, no, you would never talk about that." And so, like, it's just a reality, and, like, especially in the US, we're getting older and fatter, so you better get comfortable with hiring old fat people. Like, it's just a reality of the world you live in.
I love
Look in the
it.
mirror.
You're gonna be hiring old fat people. Ooh, that could be a good
You like
that could
that
be a good
tagline? You're
name to
like,
a
"I
book.
don't know if I want that in my podcast."
Yeah, yeah, no. No, I'm just thinking that'd be a good title to a book. Get used to it. You're hiring old fat people. Hey, it's catchy. So,
Yeah,
okay, so one
it
more
would
thing.
definitely get some people to pick it up and go, "What the heck is this?" And they're like, "Oh, Tim, ugh."
Still though, I think it's well, and it addresses though the book the content will address the important aspects of it. Now, one more question before we wrap up. You said there's another book besides the one to corporate America that doesn't have a title yet, or that we can't share the title yet. What's
Yeah.
the other book on?
It's literally just performance management. The whole thing would be performance management. So it's like we just are so bad at it. And part of this is it's twofold. I mean, I think the foundation of it starts with we tend to make leaders of the people who are the highest individual performers, right? So like, oh, you're the best accountant. Okay, now you're going to be the leader of this group, and you now have 15 people reporting to you, and they, like, actually might hate actually leading. They might be awful at performance managing. There might be somebody in that group is just an average accountant that actually has a lot of informal leadership capabilities, loves development. People like, they're willing, they just know how to, like, really get the most out of people, whatever. And we just never do that because we go, well, if we do that, then this person's going to be upset because they didn't get the promotion and they didn't get the pay. And so again, you go back to this thing of like, so really, you didn't think Tim was the best leader. Tim was just the best performer that you had to pay more. And this was the only way you could justify it. So again, broken system, broken philosophy. Instead, just pay Tim more to be an individual contributor and kill it. And you go back, well, wait a minute, if we pay Tim more, then we have to pay everybody more. No, I don't. Tim's a better performer, measurably better. If you want to get to Tim's level, I'll pay you exactly what I'm paying Tim. But if you want to stay at your level and I can define specifically what that looks like through data, then here's where you're going to be paid. We don't put that work in. We
Well,
never put that.
and the thing is, the corporate America, here's another message to them: create more roles, create more
Yeah, no,
ladders.
you
Yeah,
can have individual contributors
yeah,
that
sure,
make as much as
sure.
your managers,
Like your
directors, VPs.
MTSs and yep,
Yeah,
staff engineers or staff
for sure.
people. Yeah.
Um, I always do this thing too is like, so if you go into any group of people, and I do a lot of corporate speaking, so I'll go into an entire corporation. I'll say, okay, right now on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being you're one of the top performers in your company, and 1 being you're the walking dead, you should be fired. Raise your hand if you're a 3, and almost nobody will raise their hand. Now, because why? Because they'll say, "Oh, well, a 3 means I'm average." No, it does not. Statistically, in a bell curve, 80% of you should have raised your hand. You're gonna be a 3. And what a 3 is a 3 is, we hired you to do a job, and you actually came and did the job. Thank you very much. If you wanna be a 4, you have to do the job, plus you have to do these things as a 4. If you wanna be a 5, you have to do the 3 and the 4 and these things to be a 5. We don't define that out. So 85 to 90% of our workforces think they're 4s and 5s. And this is the entire issue with performance management, is if you come in and I tell you you're a 3, you're gonna be depressed, you're probably gonna quit. When I'm saying, "No, no, like, you're actually doing the job. I hired you, thank you for doing the job. Come back again tomorrow and do the job more." But we tell them like, "Oh my gosh, you're a 3, you're great, you're fantastic," and they're like, "Wait a minute, that doesn't match up. No, I'm a 4, I'm a 5." And so we haven't really defined out, and again, to me, this starts in the interview process where when someone comes in, you have to let them know, "This is our culture. If you come in here and you show up and you do the job that we hired you to do, we're gonna pay you, we're gonna give you benefits, you're gonna have all these things, and you're gonna be rated a 3. And that means thank you for doing the job we hired you to do." It doesn't mean average. It doesn't mean bel and if you wanna be a 4, I'm gonna tell you exactly what you need to be a 4. If you wanna be a 5, here's exactly what you need to do to be a 5. And we don't put that work in, and yet we have 90% of our employees thinking they're 4s and 5s, when in reality, 80% of them are 3s or below.
But when you phrase it the way you just did, and you tell them up front, you're gonna come and do the job and you're gonna be a 3, a year later, they may say, "No, I really wanna stay a 3," because you
Yeah.
haven't shed some sort of a negative light on it from the very
No.
beginning.
No, and by the way, 80% of our workforce is going to be 3s. They're gonna come in and do the job, and I'm so thankful that you came and did this job. But yet we tend like, we just again, part of this is the social media aspect of the world is all of these people think they need to be rock stars, they need to be the best performer, they need to be this, and you're like, just because you showed up and did the job doesn't mean you're special. You're not special. I mean, again, thank you. Thanks for coming and doing the job, but I don't need to give you a trophy for doing the job I'm paying you to do. But somehow that mentality has come through where if you're a manager right now, you dread giving performance feedback to your team because every single person that comes in and sits down in front of you thinks they're a 4 or 5, and they're not. And you have to manage through that. And to me, that's like, it's a difficult thing to do.
Matt Reek wrote a book called, The Employee Retention Bible. Have you read that one yet?
No, I've seen it though.
It's good. It's good, and he talks about, uh, I think he said A, B, C. I think he instead of, like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, he used A, B, and C, and he talks about it. So there's some similarities and parallels there, but I love your approach, though. When you first hire someone, tell them what they're coming in at, and tell them that 80% of your employee staff is or of your staff is a 3. So that they can either stay there if they want, if that's where they're comfortable, or they can advance themselves. But what do you do with the 2s and 1s?
You make a decision as a company. Again, culture wise, you say, "Hey, does this 2 have potential to be a 3?" And if I believe that as a manager, then I'm gonna work to get them. If I believe they can move up, we're gonna move them up. If I see a 2 or a 1 that I believe is going the opposite direction, then it's like, how fast can I get them off the bus and replace them with somebody I think that can be better?
Right. Exactly. Oh my god, this is fabulous. Good stuff. I love it. I can't wait for your new books to come out. Oh, I can't wait to receive the one that I've ordered. Well, this has been amazing. Thank you so, so much for being here with me. I wanna have other conversations with you as well, so we
Let's do
can.
it.
Yeah, definitely. It's awesome to meet you. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank Thanks for having me.